His reviews will get you further than the film will ever go. If you give him just a moment of your time, he'll let you know which movies rock, which movies stink, which movies shouldn't have been released. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
I think you guys pretty much already know, be it in film or philosophy, that if there is one thing I cannot stand, it is obscurantism. And I'm not talking about things that are just kinda hard to figure out. I'm talking about the Harvey, Cornel West bullshit that leaves you wondering what the hell you just sat through. Especially Cornel West. The man who said you can't get something from nothing must have been talking about Cornel West. God almighty, I hate Cornel West. But I digress. So a lot of you have probably already guessed how I was going to feel about a movie like this. Before I had seen Donnie Darko, I was aware that people basically fall into two categories on the subject. Those who had seen the film and liked it, and those who had never seen it. That's about the ratio that you usually get from a cult film, I suppose, but I was surprised by how much people seem to like this movie. It may be the most recommended film I've ever been asked to review. So for those of you who have seen my reviews of the Matrix sequels, and especially 2001, I hope this comes as a pleasant surprise to you. I liked this film a lot. This was a very, very, very good movie. Though I suppose it's now my duty to explain to the 2001 fans what the hell the difference is. This is a really difficult plot to explain, probably because there are actually two plots, and both overlap. On the one hand, this is a story of an alienated youth who struggles from a psychological disorder known as, well, being smart. Actually, it seems to me that his intelligence is the one thing, if anything, that is driving him insane. Donnie Darko accepts those things that he cannot change, a theme that runs through straight to the end of the film. He accepts the fact that he is human, that there are some issues in the human condition that you can debate until the end of time and never find a conclusion to. But the rest of the world doesn't seem to be on the same page as Donnie. Everyone in the film, from teachers to hypnotherapists to self-help moguls, all have the same plan, to try to solve Donnie's problem their way, without ever even stopping to consider that maybe there is no problem at all. The rest of the world seems preoccupied in creating simplistic solutions to problems that, in reality, don't even have any complicated solutions. According to one of Donnie's teachers, the entire human experience can be quantified by measuring it against two opposing points, fear and love. She assigns the class the task of reading over scenarios, such as cheating on a test, and has them place where the scenario lies in the fear or love scale. I've actually had similar tasks assigned to me in my school experience and elsewhere, and I so badly wanted to react the way Donnie did. You can't just lump every human action into two different categories. You have to take into account the entire spectrum of the human experience. As Mortimer Adler once said, moral philosophy does not get down to the nitty-gritty or the nuts and bolts of the practical problems that each of us has to resolve in the most trying moments of our lives. Frankly, to acknowledge this is itself an essential bit of practical wisdom. The same situation occurs when Donnie confronts a self-help guru played by the late Patrick Swayze. Donnie tells the guy exactly what I would like to tell a lot of these charlatans. Now, I'm not saying that self-help is bullshit exactly. There is a lot of good stuff out there in that field. But what I can't stand is the one-size-fits-all blanket cure-alls some of these guys peddle around. In fact, the movie itself seems to be demonstrating the difference between simplistic self-help and real therapeutic work when it switches from Donnie talking to his therapist to talking and listening to the self-help dude. Listen, I've been in and out of therapy since I was 12 years old. There, I said it. And the one thing that I've learned is that a good therapist will never lead you to believe that they have the answer for everything. This is precisely why if you ever do have a therapy session, it will involve you being asked more questions than receiving answers. A lot of psychological conditions are the same, but every person is different, which is why therapy and psychology is usually doled out in an individual basis, with one individual person talking to another individual person. Unless you're in group, which they won't let me do anymore since I ate most of the free snacks, but still. This asshole seems to have taken distinctly different conditions, being overweight, being bullied, etc., and reducing it to a problem of fear. Well, yes, fear is a central component to virtually all of humanity's problems, but that doesn't automatically mean that it is the root cause. Now, I know it seems like I've gone off on my own tangent here and have stopped talking about the movie, but that is precisely why I liked this movie. It does more than get you involved in what's going on in the plot, it gets you involved in thinking about the issues it raises. It's for this reason that I plan to watch this movie many more times after I review it. What we've been talking about thus far summarizes Donnie's journey in the film. Donnie probably does have an underlying psychological condition, but those around him seem to be throwing him out with the bathwater. If something is wrong with him, everything must be wrong with him. I suppose the overlying question in the film is where we draw that line between those problems that we can solve and those that we simply have to accept and live with in everyday life. As for the second plot, it is far weirder than the first. Donnie is pulled out of his room by a giant gray rabbit just before an airplane part falls on his bedroom. And that's when things get weird. The rabbit tells him that the world is going to end, and Donnie eventually gains the ability to see people's lifelines. And I mean literal lifelines. He is actually able to view the paths people will take in their lives, including his own. The whole thing basically loops around to being a self-fulfilling prophecy, with everything Donnie running into being important to the final act. At least, I think that's what was happening. To be perfectly honest, I've thought about this about 12 different ways, and I still don't understand how the ending can possibly make sense. Writer-director Richard Kelly has given his own interpretation that you can read on Wikipedia, but this still doesn't seem to be an explanation that makes any sense at all. Ironically enough, however, this problem actually falls into one of the categorical problems the film addresses. It is an unsolvable problem that, if you're going to watch the film, you just have to accept and live with. Writer-director Richard Kelly also talks at length about the validity of personal interpretations, but I'm going to have to disagree with him on that one. I think there is room for personal interpretations when it comes to debating the pros and cons of a work, but not when it comes to the work's meaning. I think if you have an idea in mind, the film should reflect that meaning and no one else's. Otherwise, you may as well let the audience write the damn thing for you. I'm looking at you, Stanley Kubrick. But even though Donnie Darko violates that rule on some levels, it excels far more in others. This film makes you think not only about the human condition, but also what we humans do to protect ourselves from it, by solving big problems by pretending the problems are not that big in the first place. More often than not, obscurant films do nothing but drive me up the fucking wall. But Donnie Darko gets it right, giving us an interesting character's human journey to be interested in, as opposed to nothing but psychedelic scenes of, say, landscape. This is a film I will be watching for a long time to come. The end.